Ever looked at a photo shot at 12,800 ISO and thought, man, this actually looks pretty darn good? With today's cameras, do we even need noise reduction anymore? Let's talk about it on today's episode of
Ask David Bergman.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back. Here I am, as always, answering your photography questions right here on Adorama TV. Let's jump right into today's question, which was sent in by Michael R. I primarily shoot sports and sometimes need very high ISOs. I've seen some people use noise reduction at lower ISOs, but it seems that the cameras these days look good even at 12,800. At what point is noise reduction useless? Thanks for sending that in, Mike. It's a great question because new technology has changed the game in recent years. Yes, today's sensors are so good that even some super high ISO shots look pretty darn clean, but whether or not you need to reduce that noise depends on a few important factors. Let's start with why you might need to shoot at high ISOs in the first place. Most of the time, it's not because you want to, it's because you have no choice. If you're photographing, let's say, sports or concerts, wildlife, or really anything in low light, you probably want a fast enough shutter speed to freeze motion. And if your aperture is already wide open and you can't add any more light, your only remaining option is to raise your ISO. In a perfect world, we'd keep our ISO low all the time. But if the choice is between a noisy shot that's sharp and a clean one that has motion blur because the shutter speed was too slow, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to take the sharp photo every single time. Now let's talk about what ISO noise actually is. Your ISO setting doesn't add any light. It just boosts the signal already hitting your camera's sensor. And when you amplify that signal, you also amplify everything else, including the imperfections. That's where the noise comes from. It's almost like cranking up the volume to hear me whispering. You'll hear the whisper louder, but now you might also hear some noise from the microphone. Kids playing outside, or even dogs barking. It's not really ideal, right? ISO noise, just like that, gets a lot worse when the photo is underexposed and then you brighten it later. It's not just because you were shooting in low light. Now, besides high ISOs, super long exposures can also create noise in your images. That happens when the sensor heats up during longer shutter speeds. It's a different kind of problem, and that's why most cameras have two separate settings, one for high ISO noise and another for long exposure noise. Long exposure noise reduction works by taking a second dark exposure after your shot with the shutter closed and then subtracting that heat-based noise from your image. It does a fantastic job getting rid of that noise, but it does take extra time since your camera is basically doing two complete exposures. I'll put a link in the description to a video I did about it if you want a deep dive into how that works. In-camera long exposure noise reduction applies even if you're shooting RAW because the dark frame is processed before the file is written to the card. High ISO noise reduction, on the other hand, only affects JPEG files. So if you want the most control at high ISOs, shoot RAW and apply noise reduction in post. Having said that, today's sensors, especially full-frame models, handle high ISOs much better than older ones. In early digital cameras, you'd see big color blocks, green splotches, and weird patterns. Now, the noise is finer, more consistent, and much more natural looking. Now, there are actually two types of noise. The first is luminance noise, which looks a lot like film grain. It's just brightness variation in the pixels, and it's actually present in every photo, even at base ISOs. It can add texture and character, and as long as it's not distracting, I usually don't mind it at all. The second is chroma noise, which shows up as random color specks, especially in the shadows or underexposed areas, as we've discussed. It does get a lot worse when you brighten them in post. This is the kind of noise that can be really distracting, especially if it shows up in skin tones. No one wants to see blotchy green or purple patches in a face. But let's be realistic here. If your photo is only going to be seen on social media, where it's a few hundred pixels wide and heavily compressed, no one is going to notice any type of noise, especially if it's a great image. It's just not worth worrying about. Let me know in the comments if you're using noise reduction software, and if so, which one. In most everyday situations, I don't think you need to use noise reduction at all. But that doesn't mean it's completely useless. The thing is, if you're printing really big, or you're doing a major crop, or you're working with files from an older camera, or you just shoot things like fine art where you want the smoothest images possible, that's when noise can become a real problem. Thankfully, the newest software tools can help. Adobe's AI Denoise, DxO Pure Raw, and Topaz Photo AI are just some of the tools that are out there now, and they're incredibly powerful. They don't just blur things like old noise reduction used to do, they actually use deep learning to reconstruct a cleaner version of your image. It's like those CSI shows where someone zooms in on a license plate from a satellite photo and it seems completely unrealistic. They just click that enhance button and somehow it actually works. That's kind of what's happening here. And just recently, Adobe updated Photoshop and Lightroom so that their denoise tool is now just a slider. You used to have to create an entirely new DNG file, but now it's super easy to use and you can change the amount whenever you want. Whichever tool you prefer, it's great to have so many solid options, and I'm hoping even more are coming soon. Capture One, look at you guys. Gauntlet has been thrown down. Sidebar, by the way, if you do get any value out of my videos, I do hope you'll hit that like button, subscribe to Adorama's YouTube channel, and go ahead and hit that bell icon for notifications. It really does help us out, and it lets you know when new episodes go live. All right, so how do you know if you should apply noise reduction or not? Well, it's impossible to say that you should always apply it above a specific ISO because there are just too many other variables to consider. You simply have to decide if the noise in your photo is hurting the image. If it's not distracting, if your detail still looks good, and the photo conveys what you want it to, you probably don't need to touch it. But if you're seeing blotchy shadows and muddy textures or just too much digital gunk in the file, especially from that chroma noise, then yeah, pop open that noise reduction, give it a shot. I was recommending against it even just a couple of years ago, but now that the tools are so good, knock yourself out. Like everything good though, use it in moderation. The goal isn't to erase every pixel of noise. It's just to make sure it doesn't take anything away from the moment that you captured. Leaving some texture usually is the way to go. Remember, if you've got a photography question of your own you'd like me to answer on a future episode, just go to askdavidbergman.com. That's the place to submit your question. Who knows, I just might answer it here on a future show. If you want to take a deeper dive into ISO and understand how noise really works, go check out my video called Native and Base ISO. I'll put it on the screen here somewhere so you can click that and keep learning on Adorama TV. I do appreciate you watching. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time right here on Ask David Berg.